This week in the enterprise security news, over 10 startups raising funds and or coming out of stealth. Not as many acquisitions this week. We're seeing a lot more focus on automation. IBM is acquiring HashiCorp. Tech IPOs are way oversubscribed. Open source AI security bots from OpenAI. The FTC bans non-competes, and you can't teach someone to swim when they're drowning. Then Eli Khan from SentinelOne is with us to discuss leveraging generative AI to improve SecOps. All that and more in this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Are your security teams overwhelmed with nonstop alerts? Then say hello to SentinelOne's Purple AI, the world's most powerful generative AI security analyst, built to simplify and accelerate your SecOps. Purple AI is built on the most robust data lake in the market, enabling analysts to protect your organization at machine speed. With natural language queries, threat hunting quick starts, smart response recommendations, and auto-saving investigation notebooks. See Purple AI in action at securityweekly.com/SentinelOne. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Hug a Plumber Day. This is episode 359, recorded on Thursday, April 25th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Admiral of AI, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How are you doing, Katie?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here with you and have you hear me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here with working audio.
Yes.
If you know, you know.
Exactly.
Also joining me, the savant of sports betting, the mayor of mayhem, the Y of the cyber, Tyler Shields. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing excellent, Adrian. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
And finally joining us, the Dean of Detection, the Knight of Newsletters, the Prince of the Cybersecurity Pulse, Darwin Salazar. How you doing, Darwin?
Howdy do. I can't complain. Spring is here in Texas. RSA is about 2 weeks away. We're just all drowning in AI security news. Excited to get into this week's news segment for sure.
Yeah, we are at peak spring here, peak allergy, seasonal allergy season. And it's just a lot of sneezing, even with the allergy meds. So, but it's beautiful. So trade-off. All right, some quick announcements here. Google has announced they're shutting down the Google Podcast platform in mid-2024. To make sure that you still get our podcast, you just need to switch to something else, and we're on just about everything. So if it's YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Podcast Addict, just about all the podcast platforms out there, you'll find us there. Just search for Enterprise Security Weekly or go to securityweekly.com/subscribe to find the buttons to subscribe to each show there as well. And also on the evening of Monday, May 6th, 2024 at RSA, W2 Communications and Cyber Risk Alliance are bringing cyber tacos back to San Francisco.
Ooh.
If eating free tacos, sipping on margaritas, and mingling with cyber professionals from all over the world sounds good to you, make sure to register and secure your spot. Visit securityweekly.com/cyber tacos to RSVP today. All right. And now we are doing the Enterprise Security Weekly News. We're doing things a little out of order today. We've got 2 interviews coming to you after this news segment. But today we're doing the news first. We're going to have some extra energy for it here. And I'm so glad we've got a full house with this because we've got some really interesting news stories to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mm-hmm. And where do we start? As usual, I'm a bit... I organize things. So the first 11 items are all funding. Some of these are just coming out of stealth. I was actually kind of surprised to find that Vuln Check and what's the other one? Sublime are just now raising their Series A. Like I feel like I've been hearing about these companies forever, but Sublime especially. Just now hitting their Series A. So is that... I guess we do have a lot of pre-seed and seed rounds we talk about. Is this the new norm for a company to have more of a market fit even before they get to to Series A. What do you think, Tyler?
100%. It's definitely the new norm to be a little bit further along before you take in any capital. It just so happens too that the ones that you announced, they did really well at that kind of first phase of finding design partners and discovering how to leverage their network to get some early stage business and to drive hard with very little capital and be very capital efficient. They did that well early. And I think, like, look, Volncheck is Anthony Bettini's company. He formerly did, oh goodness, a couple of other companies that are escaping me. So he's a multi time founder. The Sublime guys are extremely well connected. I did a little bit of work for them last year as a fractional advisor slash CMO with them and helped them with a few different things. And Nagomi as well. They are
Yeah.
Israeli company that had some really interesting founders, and we'll talk about their new addition of a head of marketing that joins them. But you don't need a lot of money to build a business anymore. You don't. And so there's a certain length of that early stage that can be stretched a bit longer than I think in previous iterations of startup land.
Yeah, totally. And it's we know Patrick Garrity, we just had him on the show recently, and he recently went over to Volncheck. Yeah, and it's so interesting because like some of these folks are coming out of later stage startups and moving back to the early stage. Um, yeah, so Tines, and I actually just heard somebody refer to Sublime as the Tines of email security. So it's
Mhm.
funny that Tines is still only Series B, but they're already being used as a descriptor for a type of startup at this point. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the other thing I'll bring up too about Sublime for you, Adrian, is that they've done a really good job of community building on the back of that one, which I found super interesting. When I met with them, I told them to be careful. It can tend to be a trap. Product like growth is very unique and difficult to pull off, and community building at such an early stage can be absolutely phenomenal if you can pull it off. But very few companies can do it, and they've done a good job of that. I think mostly on the concerted effort of culture building by the founders. They've done a great job of building a community there.
Yeah, I feel like the companies that do product led growth, like it's not a strategy. Like a lot of it's just linked to the personalities of the founders. Like it just naturally pours out of them. Like they kind of embody, they love the products that they're building and it just pours out. Yeah.
Certainly the ones that are successful.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
I
Yeah, and Tines.
also, I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Kitty. I was just gonna.
No, you go first, Darwin, and then Katie.
Awesome. So Tines has a huge fan base and customer base. Folks that really love the product, the founders, and all of their go to market copy. Tines is after finding PMF, they've really exploded. And another key thing to highlight about their Series B is that this is their second extension to their Series B. So they're receiving an additional injection of 50 mil for the Series B. I don't know where it's at, where that puts the entire round at for a total, but they're pretty much rolling in dough at this point.
Yeah, that's it's 105 million US plus 21.9 million euro. And I don't know what the exchange was in April 2021 when they got that 21.9 million euro, but this is a European based company based in Ireland, I believe. So that explains the euros to US dollar switcheroo there.
And they're rolling in dough, which you can't beat. Katie, you were next in line here to talk.
Yeah.
I was just going to add a little bit onto the product-led growth theme for a second because I've been talking to a lot of companies lately, and I think a lot of founders who are technical, they don't really want to interact with humans, and so they assume that all of their buyers may also be the same way. But it's very, very different. If you're technical and you're a buyer, it's very different living on the inside of building a product and trying it for the first time. And I think a lot of founders make the mistake that, oh, our product is so intuitive. It's probably not, because you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're living and breathing it. And I think that's where a founder has to be careful. And especially when creating a marketing strategy, product led growth can absolutely work. but you also have to have those outside advocates. It's not just about hiring the right people in your company. You have to have the right advocates. And I will also add that a community can't be just an offshoot of somebody's job. It's a really big effort when and if done right.
That quote's gonna come back. You're gonna see that quote again, Katie, about founders.
Maybe I just made some
Wha
enemies. I don't know.
why don't you take us on to, story number 3 here? I think you're as good as any of us to discuss, Nagomi Security and who we know who just joined that company. It's Nate.
Oh, no, I know. I'm looking at this, and my surprise is they weren't announcing the company name. So the former CMO of Exonius is Team 8 has a portfolio of companies, and both Nate Burke and Joe Hoban, who is the former vice president of sales over at Exonius, have joined the Team 8 family with Nagomi, and it's coming out of stealth. I know just from talking to Nate, he actually just texted me 2 seconds before we went on air that he's having fun. He's really enjoying it. And there are really big goals for that team. I know I don't know what to expect out of the product yet. I know we can expect a little craziness out of the branding and marketing. I promise that.
Yeah.
So
I
I can actually add a little bit of color for you because I worked with them way early in stealth for at least
Oh, okay. Yeah,
three to
because
5 months
I'm looking at
last
this
year.
thinking I need a briefing because I don't fully understand what they're
Yeah, it's
doing.
been
Go ahead.
going for several months.
Well, they've
But it
rebranded, right? This is their second name.
Right, so it
Yes,
was
it
under
is.
so when you said Nagomi, I'm thinking, "What the heck is this?" Yeah, no,
It's
formerly
the
known as
artist
Vena.
formerly known as Vena. That's right.
Right, right.
I think one of the most surprising things that jumped out to me is that they've already hit 1 million ARR while in stealth.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely insane. And though they were founded in January 2023, there's a lot of like oopsies and gotchas and lessons learned on your way to your first million in ARR. And I think they've hit that fairly quickly. So maybe they're close to PMF or escape velocity. But I'm really excited to see what Nagomi does moving forward.
Yeah,
Unless
they're
the entry level pricing is $1 million dollars a year
it
for the
is
product.
not. It is not. So Emmanuel and Shai and the founding team there, and I would be remiss not to put Sophia in that list, who helped them with marketing for well over a year now, until Nate has come on to assist her as well. Um, they've been working hard at this thing. I met with them weekly for many months. Very impressed with the level of effort, communications that they were doing with their design partners and their early adopters. And really, it goes to show you with, again, back to our opening commentary about some of these fundings. If you take even just a little bit of capital in and you're efficient with how you deploy it, you can get to 1 million or 2 million in ARR on very little capital in today's world. And that's the approach that they took. They were very smart about it. I pressed them to go faster. Emmanuel was way smarter than me and made some really, really great decisions on timing, and I think has positioned himself and his company right now in a good spot to continue to grow. So they are involved with a number of wonderful folks who helped fund this. And of course, it's not, there we are. Near from Exabeam, Guy Pajarni from Sneak, the founder of Clarity, Shlomo Kramer is involved. There's a who's who of the angels that are backing this one. And so I'm definitely excited to stay close to how they grow going forward. Um, their platform is predominantly around kind of a unification of significant number of other technologies into a single platform. I haven't seen it since June, so I don't want to murder the pitch by trying to get too into the technical details. I stopped working with them June or July of last year and have not caught up with them. So I think we should get a briefing from them and we can bring it back to the team to go from there.
I think we have some
All
people
right.
we could personally reach out to and make that happen
We know a few.
pretty easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could. Absolutely. Yeah, so Tyne's pretty exciting, and I the reason I love Tynes is I just love the way they're going about it, and I hope this is a trend of more companies like that. Like hearing Sublime called the Tynes of email security makes me very happy because these are products you can onboard very quickly, you can get value out of very quickly. They've got strong communities around them, and we need more products in cybersecurity that are like that. So yeah, I'm just happy to see that in general here. Number two here we have Anvilogic closes a $45 million Series C. So seeing some very different sizes here. But yeah, the industry's first multi-data platform SIM. So we're starting to see this not just in cybersecurity, but even outside cybersecurity, where everybody's got so much data, they don't all want to necessarily move it around and centralize it in one place. And Darwin, I think I'm going to go to you first for some thoughts on this. Particularly that it's not even the first generation, but their second generation Copilot. I think that's going to be the other big thing we're going to see with all these data lake plays is throwing some kind of generative AI or some kind of ML on top of it.
100%. So you have these standalone startups that are building out their own AI security co-pilots, like Drop Zone AI, and they're more of like a staff augmentation play. Like, hey, go hunt down these tickets or alerts that are lower severity but are linked to, say, critical applications and systems. And then that co-pilot or agent will go and hunt down all of the relevant log data or activity associated with that alert and serve it up to an analyst so that they can perform their analysis. And so if you're a SIEM or a SOC platform like Anvilogic that can have that internally already, that's definitely a force multiplier because it reduces the amount of tools that a enterprise or security team may need to buy. What really stands out to me about Anvilogic is that they're not saying, hey, only use a SIM or go with a security data lake. They plug into both Splunk and Snowflake and Azure Sentinel, and they kind of layer an analytics layer on top of those platforms. So you could use SPL, KQL, SQL, whatever query language you want. Their approach or tagline is kind of like cut SIM cost without rip and replace. So I think they've obviously gained a lot of traction to be able to raise a Series C, and they're in that maturing go to market expansion phase. And one last thing to highlight there is that Omer Singer, previously a huge security data lake advocate over at Snowflake, has joined them as VP of
Mm.
product strategy. And so I think they're well equipped for the road ahead.
So, Darwin, I have a follow-up question for you on this one. Are they attempting to connect event data, security event data, with security asset data, and then to provide an enriched fabric of kind of a deeper analysis across not just SIM events, but actually what you have in the environment, how it's interconnected, and overlaying that with event data as well?
I don't have like a sure answer for that, but
Okay,
when we think about the type of data that gets stored in a data lake like Snowflake, it's data that doesn't usually go to a SIEM. What you see in a SIEM is more like real time data, log
event
event
data.
security. Yeah, things related around real time monitoring and activity. And then what you see in a data lake, it's like vuln management data, things to build out your KPIs and metrics, anything for more advanced analytic use cases. And so if you have a detection layer or a layer that allows you to marry data from both of those platforms, then things can get very unique in terms of higher fidelity or more sophisticated
Yeah,
correlated detections. There's a lot of fun things that can happen once you have access via query language to both of those data sources. So
100%.
Well,
Super excited about the future of that market, and it also goes into our next guest, Adrian, as well.
yeah, yeah, it does, and I think you have to marry all that stuff for the value prop to work here, particularly with the AI agent, because that all that context is exactly where the time savings are going to be, where that staff aug is going to be. Instead of opening 19 tabs and trying to manually use your brain to correlate SIM data with vulnerability data with asset data, You need it to be somewhat connected where you can just ask an AI questions about it. And uh, we have to get there. Like this has already been promised for so long, and now we finally have technology that could decently do this. We can't fail at this. The technology's right there. It's if anything fails, I think it's going to be the integration of all that data. You know, getting a large language model or whatever they're using access to all those different data sets. And I think if it has to happen, maybe we see some acquisitions to tie these data sets together. Yeah.
Already happening, eh?
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Synomi is an interesting one. So again with the staff aug thing, this thing is pitched as an AI powered virtual CISO platform. So a real virtual CISO.
Hmm.
Not a person who's a vCISO, but an AI who's a vCISO. So I don't know if they just fed it LinkedIn, security LinkedIn, and that makes it a vCISO. Not sure what the
All you
training
need.
data is for this,
All
but
you need is a
interesting.
little news.
See, virtual Phil Venables.
The output on that would be stellar.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else interesting here? Do you know anything about Vorlon? Is seems like it'd be more in your neck of the woods. It's API
Yeah.
security, so I just default to use Tyler.
Yeah, probably as you should, as that is
No
technically
pressure.
my day job. We've seen Vorlon popping up a little bit, um, and it is more of a third party API security tool. If I recall correctly, they're primarily focused on how your applications may make calls to third party APIs
Yeah.
as opposed to internal APIs
Protecting
or
your own APIs.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. So it's kind of like a SaaS security meets API security meets product development. Um, I'm not sure how that's different than any other API and why they're calling out specifically
Mhm.
third-party APIs. An API call is an API call, if you ask me. But I look forward to reading some of their content as they create it and trying to understand how that differentiates them.
Yeah, I wonder if we see something like this combined with something like Postman in the future, for example.
Could be, could be.
Yeah, I don't know if they're developer focused as a customer, but um, B4 AI is an interesting one. That's number 7. They've got 15 million in a Series A, led by Sin Ventures. I think we had 2 led by Sin Ventures in here. I forget which 2, but um, definitely an interesting name. That's the letter B, FORE, the letter AI, letters AI. That's how that's spelled. Yeah, Breach RX is the other one, led by Sin Ventures.
Oh,
So yeah, before AI
before
autonomously
AI, when I
maps and
read it,
predicts. Huh?
continue. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll make comment after.
Yeah, before AI, so this is straight out of their press release, autonomously maps and predicts malicious infrastructure through the ingestion of massive data sets, analyzing internet metadata and establishing baselines to detect anomalies, deterring them before they turn into attacks. And
Before.
so my analysis of this when I was putting this together last night was, it sounds like they're generating and acting upon threat intelligence, like without human intervention.
And it also sounds like something straight out of Minority Report. See, it sounds like the precogs. Instead of having a bunch of human beings in some kind of liquid, they've got AIs that are precogging, I guess, or something. I don't know, but
Well,
it's always funny.
so we see this in the brand reputation space, right? Like if they see totally not fake capital1.com get registered, like they're going to go out and try and prevent that from becoming an attack, right? So, I mean, you don't have to be a precog to know that, Capital One with a zero instead of an O, could be used for phishing attacks.
But actually, is that illegal in and of itself in the sense that it's brand and trademark infringing?
Right. Sure. Yeah.
So,
Well, and,
in
and that
essence,
might
they're
be,
already breaking the law.
yeah, that might be part of how, but I mean, that's commoditized today, right? Like
Yeah.
the number of companies that will help do takedown assistance and stuff like that, that's pretty common out there today. So I wonder if this is linked to that in some way.
Yeah. Tough to know, but when you're looking at more and more data to get predictive before things attack, it's always an interesting fine line. I love to see how they're doing it in a way that's like accurate enough to not be in a precog scenario, right? To be like, hey, this hasn't happened yet, but you're going to, so you're in trouble, right? And in the example that
Mhm.
you gave us, if I register, Adrian Sanabria with an O instead of an A on the end, like that's trademark infringement. That well, you don't have your name trademark, but if it was a
Well,
company's name, it would be a
you don't
trademark
know.
infringement, a
I could.
copyright issue. Yeah, you could. Um, and so it's already something that can be actively ripped and taken down. But how do you know? Like, what are we looking at? A bunch of pre data that's swirling around the dark web that says that TylerHackerGroup.co is targeting Adrian. Like, how do we? That's always such a gray area for me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just going to sum up kind of the rest of the funding here because we got to move on to other stuff. Um, with so predictive stuff and automation are kind of a theme here. If you look at vulncheck, there's some exploit prediction going on, predicting if they're using EPSS, they're trying to help customers predict like what the next big 0 day or big deal is going to be. And then if you look at night vision, empower developers to discover and remediate issues before the flaws are deployed. And then you've got amplifiers, self-healing workforce security. So it helps your workforce resolve their own security issues autonomously. So everything's looking like automation and catching things before they become problems. And I don't. That sounds very hypey to me. That sounds like stuff we've heard before that's really tricky to do at scale. So and potentially very false positive heavy. So
The question is,
yeah,
can AI get us there? That's really what it boils down to. It's the fundamental question: is AI going to be enough to actually make this work?
yeah, yeah. And we're gonna find out in real time, weekly. Listen to this show, and and we'll reveal more as we try out these products. We get briefings, and we hear from people using them. So moving on, we've got two acquisitions here. Commvault acquired Appranix. So cloud resilience, something around cyber resilience for enterprises. I don't know too much about that one, but HashiCorp I'm more familiar with. And when I started writing this up, it was a rumor, but now the deal is official. HashiCorp has a blog on their website. IBM is acquiring HashiCorp, and much like a Broadcom deal, a lot of customers probably aren't going to be too happy about this. IBM doesn't have the, if you go all the way back to the ISS days, fans of ISS products saw them slowly go away and get dismantled. And uh, Q Radar, I don't think was that bad. So maybe it's kind of a crapshoot as opposed to a certainty. That the acquisition's going to kill everything people like about the product. Who knows?
It is IBM.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities between this acquisition and Cisco acquiring Splunk, where
Yeah,
you had the industry kind of like super upset that
yeah,
such like a monolithic, long-standing company that is not known for their innovation, like Cisco, go out and acquire Splunk. And so as with IBM, which has been around maybe since like the 1970s, they're not really known for innovation, and acquiring a company that owns Terraform and HashiCorp Vault and a lot of the tooling that modern day engineers are using, what does that spell out for innovation and let's say addressing customer support requests and things of that nature. And as I'm saying this, also comes into my mind. Well, yeah, I'll close the loop there. But the industry did not like this acquisition, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense in terms of
And the
brand fit.
And then if we look at it from a pure financial standpoint, if I recall correctly, and these are ballpark numbers, so please don't quote me on them. I believe they IPO'd in the 80s, in the 80-ish range per share, and this acquisition's occurring at about 35. And I don't think there
yeah,
were any splits between, which means this is a bit of a haircut as well.
yeah. Yeah, and, Darwin, I will have you know, as the old man here, IBM has been around since 1911. 1911. Before they made
Wow.
computers, they made counting machines. So they actually
Adrian
made the leap from counting machines to computers.
Adrian actually remembers when they first IPO'd and they first came out.
I have no idea when they IPO'd, but yeah, it's I have read the history before. I forget what I was doing that led me down that rabbit hole, but I have ADHD, so it literally could have been anything. I could have been researching carpets,
Tacos.
you know.
Yeah.
He was researching tacos, and Adrian was doing the math on his abacus on how much to pay for shares for IBM back in his youth.
Yeah, it's an interesting story about like at some point all computers were supercomputers, right? You know, and then the whole PC revolution happened, and then Linux happened, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, it went from like mainframes to, you know, like AS400 type computers to, you know, running Linux on a Raspberry Pi, people building Raspberry Pi
Next up,
clusters.
next up on Old Man Security Weekly.
Nice.
And you yell, "Get off my
All
lawn,"
right.
after every story.
Exactly.
So yeah, my girlfriend actually pointed out to me that some of these new tech IPOs are crazily oversubscribed, pointing to the Rubik one specifically. Tyler, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah. You know, I feel like
Is it just
we've
because the
just
industry starved for IPOs?
yes, 100%. That's a big piece of it. I mean, listen, the metrics on the company are good too. Like if you don't have good metrics, you can't IPO and have an oversubscription, right? It just well, outside of .com days and ZERP era days, you couldn't do that. Like today, it's impossible. If your metrics are no good, you're never going to oversub. So the health of the company is there for sure. And I do think that some of that oversubscription comes from dry powder sitting on the side that's looking for a place to go. Powder needs a home, right? What's the saying? Paper just sitting there is a fire hazard, right? So we don't let paper just sit there. We got to put it to work, and we got to put those little soldiers out there returning capital for us. So I think this is one of those situations where it's like, hey, this is healthy, this is a good one, and I don't want my paper catching fire, so let me put it to work.
Good stuff. Good insights there. So I am going to, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to jump ahead, just touch lightly. We've got a few open source things linked here. OpenAI actually built some security bots and open sourced them, released them. They have an incident response Slack bot, an SDLC Slack bot, and a triage Slack bot. So I thought that was interesting. And that's story number 16. Um, let's see, we've got 18 and 19 are both kind of analyses of cybercrime and or postmortems on different malwares and criminal groups, chock full of good details on how they do lateral movement, what tools they use, all kinds of stuff that you'd want to consume and get into your detection engineering pipelines. And we do have a dumpster fire where devs have been flooding npm, and I thought there was I didn't think it was just that. I thought there were several repositories that were flooded with packages because there's some kind of crypto thing that rewards people for like the number of projects they create or something like that. Like if you create a project and it's followed by a certain number of people, you get some kind of crypto coin, you get some kind of funding, you know, and it's this the intent is good. The intent is to reward open source development, you know, and the idea is okay, maybe we can do this at scale with kind of a same thing Brave tried to do with BAT tokens, basic attention tokens, where you would load up your browser with $30, and as you browse the internet and you read essays and stuff on Substack, you're passively paying people for what you're reading. You know, so I think it was the idea was that, but obviously it's being abused at this point, and people are automating packages and just flooding these package managers.
Whenever there's an option to find a scam, people are going to find it, right? And I know this for a number of reasons. You know, sports betting being one of them, right? If whenever you find an edge, you take that edge and you hammer it with as much money as you can. And so I don't think that's any different in business.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody didn't do the threat mapping on their on their, that is a very example of like if you're starting a bug bounty or something like that, what they call perverse incentives.
Mhm.
And when money gets into it, you got to be careful when you start offering money for bugs or money for developers, open source developers. Somebody's going to find a way to game it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and also the spike over the past couple of years in crypto jacking of Kubernetes clusters and attackers using Kubernetes clusters to mine Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. This is like we see this a lot in the real world in the trenches. It's like just not folks necessarily looking to cause a major data breach. They're just looking for more compute resources so that they can mine more crypto. It's pretty insane, and that financial incentive is a reason why we see a lot of breaches and attacks today. So
Yep. Interesting essay here from Chris Hughes, which you were just on a podcast with Chris Hughes, right, Darwin?
yeah, yeah. I was on a podcast with Chris. Think a couple of months back. But this essay here, you can't teach someone to swim when they're drowning. By the way, if you don't follow Chris Hughes' Substack, Resilient Cyber, you should go ahead and give that a follow. But this one's just highlighting security control effectiveness at a very high level. And I think the one that stood out to me the most is asset management and attack surface management and asset inventorying. I think those are like very fundamental and foundational practical steps that you can take on in the first 30 days of joining a security organization and reap many rewards from it. And so I think this essay provides a deep dive into what other security controls are like low hanging fruits, but can reap a lot of rewards from a security perspective. Definitely recommend checking out his Substack for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Uh, the FTC announced a rule banning non competes, and many celebrated. And there's a small carve out for management with policymaking privileges. I don't know how they validate that. That make over 151K per year. But aside from that, already in like many states at the state level have been blocking not non competes or basically made them illegal. So
So
this seemed like a logical next step.
it's really interesting conversation here because I saw this from two vantage points. I'm in some Slacks that are founders of startups of other cyber companies. I'm in other Slacks that are investors and that are employees, like
Mhm.
cybersecurity marketers Slack. The cybersecurity marketers Slack, universally, every single one of them celebrated the non-compete scenario. They're like, yay,
Interesting.
we don't have to worry about this garbage anymore. We can work, go from one to the next if we need to. The founders had a different spin on it. Majority of them were okay with it. Majority of them were like, look, we're not trying to be hard asses, but there were a fair amount of them that said, hey, no, we want people to be locked in. We don't want them to go to our competitors. We don't want them to take our IP. So, well, I think the vast majority of individual contributors across the board will celebrate this. I do think that you will see some pushback, whether it be minor or even a little bit more organized, from founders of companies and senior executives of companies that are saying, hey, no, this is dangerous to our company, to our IP, et cetera, et cetera. I personally celebrate it across the board. I don't think we should have non-competes ever. I think it should be if you're going to hire me and fire me at will, I should be able to go anywhere I want at will. So, anyways, I think we could easily get into an hour debate on that topic alone.
Yeah.
And I think
And
it's
then
really,
finally, we got to
really
go ahead,
important.
Kate.
I think it's really important to think about this from a market point of view instead of a personal and selfish point of view, and what we're incentivizing here. So, again, not going to get into it right now. Maybe we'll get into it on a different podcast. But I think the key here is to look at it as a market decision and not a how is this going to affect me in the future decision. I'm not against protecting IP. That's not what I mean. But I definitely think there will be a tendency for people to think about it from their own. Well, what about me? What about my
Absolutely.
company? What about my employment? And there's a much bigger picture.
Yeah. Every time somebody does a study on positive versus negative, and the impact it has, positive is usually 6 times better, so maybe think more about incentives to retain your employees, and less about the ways to take action against them when they leave or when you lay them off.
Well, there's also the issue, hey, if we're complaining we can't hire in cybersecurity, we don't have enough skilled staff, we don't have people with the right expertise, we don't have enough people with tribal knowledge. Work hard to keep good people. I mean,
Yeah.
cybersecurity is a revolving door, and that's just as much on employers as it is on employees.
Yeah, the average employee, I don't think wants to move that much,
No,
right? So time to ask
it's
why they are.
it's
Are you not
disruptive.
paying? Yeah, yeah,
It's
it is.
disruptive.
It is. I opened a bin the other day that I had in my house, and like every major healthcare provider, there's a card with my name on it in there. And
I
some
have
of
the
them,
most health care.
and some of them, 4 or 5 were from the same company. And they just kept switching healthcare, and it like, 3 months on one, and then all of a sudden we're switching to some other HR management company, and they only work with one healthcare provider or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's so even without changing jobs, it changes constantly. It's
Yeah, my
crazy.
last company did that. They changed. I don't really even know what they did. They changed from an outsourced provider to the company, and I couldn't get in my old account. And I'm like, this needs to be transferred. Like everything I have is in there. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
if you stay at a company for 5, 8, whatever years, you might not want to stay longer than that, but at least there's more continuity to your life.
Yeah. All right, and to wrap up here, we have got a squirrel story. Somebody named Bert Hubert wrote a piece of open source for Linux called Tracker Beeper that basically makes noise anytime you send data to Google, and it's configurable where you can do that for other products as well. And this is really the first thing I've seen since maybe Pi-hole. If anybody's set up Pi-hole on their home network before, allows you to block. I know it sounds bad, but it allows you to block different trackers and um, advertisers and things like that. You can subscribe to lists that will block different stuff. But generally, like it's or the other one. What was the Chrome plugin? No script. uh, without that stuff, it's kind of hard to visualize where your data is going, to whom it's going, things like that. So I think it's a fun project to, instead of visualizing, use sound, just to kind of get across how often your data goes to some of these companies.
My home network would make a screeching, squealing sound 24/7 if that were the case.
There's a video in there. If you follow the link and you watch the demo videos, as soon as he adds a few other ones in addition to Google, yeah, it's just pretty much a constant tone. It's bad. All right. That's all we've got today. Thank you so much, Tyler, Katie, and Darwin, for joining me today on the news.
Always a pleasure to be here, Adrian. Thank you.
All right. And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk improving SecOps with generative AI with Eli Kahn from Sentinel One.